Russell Wilson no longer a Denver Bronco. This is the worst trade in NFL history. Tags, not tags, Kelsey retirement, and as one offensive lineman walks off into the sunset, there's a new crop of offensive linemen showing out at the NFL Scouting Combine. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love the everydayers out there so much, and we love it when all of you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to play with if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. $85 million in dead money, Matt, the Denver Broncos will have to overcome over the next 2 seasons after releasing quarterback Russell Wilson. Just a debacle of a move by the Denver Broncos franchise, set them back. They've got new coaches in place. They're going to have new quarterbacks in place now, and they're going to have a whole bunch of dead money. If I'm not mistaken, it is for sure the biggest dead money hit any team has ever had and probably will have for the next couple of decades until there's a $500 million salary cap. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, Matt, it's a bigger dead money hit than the next 2 highest dead money hits combined in NFL history.
Yeah, I mean, not only does it set a record, but it just obliterates it. I mean, like, to put this in some context, I went and looked at who had the most dead money as an entire team for the 2023 season. And it was the Tampa Bay Bucks. You know, they paid their bills on Brady and going all in, and they had $76 million in dead cap space, which is a monster number. That was the most for any team. Wilson's well over that. I mean, it's a crippling move. I mean, it really is. And I know Sean Payton's getting compensated extremely well, but I could see that team being one of the bottom 5 for the next year or two. And what do you do at quarterback?
Right. And so you don't have the most important position in sports, and you had a lack of picks because you traded for a quarterback that didn't work out. And usually you see a lack of draft picks. They don't show up necessarily right away with team talent. It shows up down the road 2-3 years when those guys are supposed to develop into impact starters and potentially superstars for your football team. We're talking about first round draft picks. And so the Denver Broncos avoid the $37 million more in guarantees that you know, there was a lot of talk with. They were going to bench him unless he restructured his guarantees. So this guarantee thing wouldn't happen. I don't think he would have stayed, but maybe he'd have played more last year. But obviously things didn't work out with the Broncos. They're getting out from under this contract. They put a post June 1st designation on this release, so it spreads that cap hit over the course of 2 seasons instead of hitting all the salary cap this year. But as far as Russell Wilson goes, Matt, how much does he have left in the tank? How do you go from being an MVP candidate halfway through 3 seasons ago to being a guy is he even going to be a starter? Is there a fit for him out there? Is he a stopgap? Who is Russell Wilson in the NFL now?
Yeah, it's a tough one. So the allure now of adding Wilson is he's getting paid by the Broncos either way. So Team X, you know, the Falcons, the Steelers, whoever, could sign him to a league minimum deal, and he's going to make the same amount of money either way. So he should do that to his new team. And that to me is very attractive, you know. But I mentioned the Steelers. Like, I wouldn't do it if I were the Steelers because I wouldn't want to assure him that he could be a starter. You know what I mean? Like, I think he assumes he's a starter. I keep coming back to the Raiders, which how funny would that be if the Raiders were like, we're going to pay him $1 million, you guys pay him the rest, and we'll play against you guys twice a year.
It's the perfect fit. In fact, I think
is.
it's the only fit for Russell Wilson is the Las Vegas Raiders. They stick it to their counterparts in the AFC West. They pay him $1.2 million veteran minimum to come in, be a stopgap starter, and whatever. If they draft a guy and that guy's ready to play after 3 weeks, then that's it. And if he plays well and he beats the Broncos twice, then that's even more awesome.
Yeah, no question. Because I don't think either one of those teams, Denver, doesn't have a great avenue to get their quarterback. He doesn't seem like the mentoring type, hold down the fort until the first round pick is ready. But who knows? I mean, I do think Sean Payton dealt with him a lot better than LaFleur did 2 years ago, by all accounts. But one of his biggest problems, he has a lot of problems at this point. I don't know if he's one of the best 32 on the planet. Maybe. I mean, he played better last year than maybe given credit for, but his size is a problem. I mean, people think short quarterbacks don't matter anymore, but he has a hard time seeing, and he used to be such a good athlete with such quick feet that he could manipulate in the pocket to find throwing lanes. Now he's a little bit compromised, and you're seeing that problem escalate.
And he needs to play in an offense that allows him to do that because he can still move a little bit to get out of the pocket, buy some time, hit those rainbows down the field. Because one of the thoughts was, oh, man, okay, well, look, he's a short quarterback. Sean Payton had a Hall of Fame short quarterback and won a Super Bowl with him, right, with Drew Brees for a long time in New Orleans. So maybe this is a good fit and it's going to work. But it's just not – that's not Russell Wilson's game. So what's the offensive fit there? Is Luke Getsy's scheme in I'm call it Oakland, in Las Vegas? Is that the right fit for him with the Raiders? I don't know. But just the –
he wouldn't be my first choice for any team.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So the Raiders, too, the reason it makes sense because they're sitting at 13 in the NFL draft. So they're behind Minnesota. Right. They're behind Atlanta. And those two teams have to figure out which team is going to get Kirk Cousins, it sounds like. So Kirk Cousins is going to be the belle of the ball in free agency at quarterback. And there's reports out there that maybe that's the number one get for the Atlanta Falcons. And so now we have to wait for Kirk Cousins to go somewhere to see where maybe the team that doesn't get Kirk Cousins, do they go make a trade for Justin Fields? And it's one of the word out of the combine early in the week was, oh, it sounds like the Atlanta Falcons, that might be a done deal. And then it's like, oh, actually the Pittsburgh Steelers might be in on Justin Fields. And then at the end of the combine, it's like, maybe nobody's really that in on Justin Fields right now. So I think some things have to play out. And then someone's going to say, well, we didn't get Kirk Cousins, so let's go get Fields and then figure this thing out the rest of the way. And whatever it is, pick 8, 11, and 13 in the NFL draft, it's probably not going to be high enough to get one of the top 3 and maybe top 4 quarterbacks in this class, as it seems coming out of the combine.
Yeah, and really the best thing I can say about Wilson is you can get him for league minimum. I mean, that's attractive. You could have a very cheap quarterback room. I just don't know that there's any kind of answers there. I don't know this for a fact, but it sure feels like the Fields market was way overblown. Like when that's all said and done, I could see the Bears getting a pick like a conditional second or third next year based on playing time. Like, I don't know that anybody wants to pay him, pay a second round pick this year and assure him the starting spot.
I would, if you put the over under on the first pick in the third round, I would say that they get a pick later than that.
Later.
If it's this year pick. Now, maybe there's a conditional future second that's part of the deal. And so, that gets paid later by it. But let's say it's the Steelers or the Falcons. I think their third round pick would be what the compensation is. I don't think we're talking about a second plus a fifth or a second plus a fourth. I've seen that thrown out there. I think a third round pick right now in the 2024 draft is the value best for Justin Fields in trade.
Yeah. Best case. Yeah, I hear you. So you mentioned, is this one of the worst trades in NFL history? I think that answers yes. But let's not forget Deshaun Watson's looming out there too.
That was a lot of candidates recently. Niners lit 3 first-round picks on fire for a quarterback who played 4 games. I mean, that's unheard of. At least, Herschel Walker got a chance to play for his team. At least Russell Wilson got a chance to play for his team. 49ers went and got a guy and then didn't use him at all. It's wild. So, and obviously the Deshaun Watson thing's not done yet. Deshaun Watson might be a free agent right now if his entire contract wasn't guaranteed. But they can't.
Oh, 100%.
Because we're talking about $200 in dead money or $200 million. Excuse me.
The Lance trade's brutal, but this is just this one and Watson. And Watson might turn out to be a fine player. But the cap hit that those guys are ensuing is just ridiculous. I mean, at least Lance didn't hurt him from a cap perspective.
Yes.
But I pulled it up just so people remember. It was Russell Wilson in a 2022 fourth for Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, Noah Fant. None of those guys are great, but that's not nothing. I mean, those guys have played snaps and have value. A 2022 first, a 2022 second, 2022 fifth, and 2023 first and second, all for Russell Wilson. Like, it's an awful deal.
Hey, the Denver Broncos have a draft pick, though, this year in the first round. So
True.
This is the cleansing moment. This is where you start over again. Is that pick going to be a quarterback? Kirk Cousins in Denver, maybe, but they have dead money. How can they pay a $40 million plus dollar quarterback, even if it's on a short-term deal? In fact, the longer term it is, the easier it is to get that cap number right at the beginning of the contract. So a lot to figure out for where the quarterback carousel is going to spin as free agency begins, as the NFL draft gets going here toward April, and of course, how teams like the Denver Broncos now operate in a quarterbackless world. Are they quarterbackless though? Do they just go with their guy Jarrett Stidham?
Yeah, could be.
Maybe he's the 1 year. Like let's just let this play out. There's not going to be a quarterback for us there in the draft. We got to figure out the cap situation. 1 more year, Jarrett Stidham. Do it again next year. Maybe draft our quarterback. And then maybe wait for Sean Payton at that point.
I mean, are you signing a Brissett or Tyrod Taylor or Penix in the second round or something like? I mean, that's kind of what you're looking at here.
Yeah, round 2, Bo Nix. I could see Bo Nix in offense. Maybe that's the fit. Actually, now that I think about it, with Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos, Penix had a really nice combine. By the way, and as far as quarterbacks, nobody had a chance to really do anything because most of the top guys didn't do it. So I think that helps JJ McCarthy, Penix, Bo Nix, who did have nice combines throwing the football around a little bit. Speaking of the combine, Matt, we got to talk about offensive linemen, and there's a ton of good ones in this draft. Franchise tags as well coming up next. This episode of Peacock Williamson is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. And it happens a lot. It happens to me all the time. You spend so much of your life wishing you had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. And I can't say it enough. It's so important just to check in, make sure you're hitting your short-term goals every week. And that's going to add so much time to your life if you are hitting those goals and you are where you want in your life. And then you can appropriately utilize that time you have to do all the special things you need to. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Brian Burns officially gets the franchise tag, and there was reports over the last few days at the combine that there was no more negotiations, there was no more offers coming from the Panthers side to Brian Burns, and it really does feel like a tag and trade now is much more likely for Brian Burns this offseason, and maybe that's because Brian Burns doesn't want to do a long-term deal with the Carolina Panthers. He's still a player that I think they should try to sign, but as of now, Brian Burns getting the franchise tag by the Carolina Panthers. That tag is for $24 million fully guaranteed for this 2024 season, Matt. And then as expected, Saquon Barkley, Giants running back, will not get the franchise tag, will hit free agency. And the one that kind of surprised me a little bit is it sounds like defensive tackle Christian Wilkins of the Miami Dolphins is just going to walk in free agency. He's not going to get the franchise tag. And I don't know if Miami's in a place where they can pay him what he's going to get on the market. So Christian Wilkins is actually the surprising one, the big one, and might be, as far as free agents go, non-quarterback division, because Kirk Cousins is going to make a whole bunch of money from somebody, I'm sure. Christian Wilkins might be taking it to the bank.
Oh, man.
In a couple weeks.
No question. I mean, if you're a team like the Bears that have a ton of cap space, I mean, I'm giving Wilkins basically anything he wants. I mean, he's probably a top 7 or 8 defensive tackle and young and considered a great leader and great effort and character guy.
Love that for
I
the
think that's
Bears. Yeah.
what's that?
Love that for the Bears.
Bears would be great. Yeah, it'd be phenomenal. I've been saying for a while, since studying free agency for months ago now, I think the Ravens, but especially the Dolphins, are set to really get hit hard. I mean, it's all finances, and they don't even have Tua signed yet. So I'm not saying Miami's window's shut, but I don't think their roster will be nearly as good as it was a year ago. They just don't have the finances. Barkley's not shocking, but I thought maybe they would tag him. You know, it's not a crazy number for a running back, but I think they want to be less running back centric and develop a real passing game and, you know, spend on O-linemen, things like that.
Speaking of teams and quarterbacks, you going to build that new passing game around Daniel Jones, or is
no, that's the
what else you got to do there? And, you know, they can get it. There's an out in Daniel Jones' contract basically after this season, so he might be more of a stopgap as well. And Giants are picking 6. That might not even be high enough for J.J. McCarthy at this point. There was Diana Rossini reported that coming out of the combine that one GM told her quarterbacks were going 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's insane, but yeah, I can see it. I mean, it's just the way the world works. Lastly, Burns, I want to talk about too. For a while there, I thought, boy, Carolina's in bad shape. Keep all your good players, you know, at least have a defense. But now the more I think it through, I mean, you're not going to tag them after this year. I think they're in such bad shape that that's one of their only assets they can get real collateral for. You know what I mean? Real stuff back. So a lot of teams should be in the market for Brian Burns.
They should be able to get I mean, obviously, you go back to the Rams offer, the trade deadline in the 2022 season. At the time, you know, the Panthers, to their credit, didn't know exactly how the next 18 months were going to go. But, man, they screwed up not taking those 2 first-rounders from the Los Angeles Rams. Yeah. But I don't know if they can get 2 firsts now at this point with a tag and trade. But for sure, a first-round pick, probably a pretty high first-round pick, and then something else in next year's draft on top of it. And if you're the Panthers, I think you have to rebuild in that fashion, because what's one pass rusher going to do for you if you don't have everything else figured out? And you got to build around your young quarterback you just drafted number 1 overall.
Yeah, 100%. And they don't have first, of course. I mean, the latest trade that I can think that's sort of comparable, but it's sort of apples to oranges, is Montez Sweat going to the Bears. I mean, that was an early second for Sweat, but Sweat didn't have a contract at that point, and that was trade deadline. You were renting him for the second half of the year. I mean, that's a starting point. I think you get at least a first from a contender.
Oh, yeah. I would say at minimum, you're getting a pretty high first round, a mid first round pick too, like a team in the teens. You know, maybe there's a team that says, we could just draft Dallas Turner. So why would we go get, you know, a lean pass rusher and spend all that money plus that first round pick? Let's go to the draft and get our guy. But, you know, beyond that, I could definitely see, you know, teens, early 20s teams being like, oh, heck yes, please take my first round pick. If you got the cap space, let's go do this.
Yeah,
what about
great player?
How about this? Okay. Chicago Bears, they draft Caleb Williams number 1. They trade pick 9 for Brian Burns, and they sign Christian Wilkins, and they feasibly fit all that in.
They could do that. That's not crazy. And I think the Panthers would say yes. Wilkins would be very interested because they can give him anything they want. And probably even sign other things, another pass catcher,
because they got a ton of cap space.
They got it all.
The New England Patriots have a ton of cap space. They're not giving up the 3rd pick though in a trade. So yeah, this is going to be a fun one, and the multiple other tags.
Houston, and put him opposite Will Anderson.
And then by the time Will Anderson's going to get paid, then you're off of Burns, salary wise.
I mean, their picks later than Chicago's. It's not. I mean, I would consider that.
Absolutely, I could definitely see that. I like it. I like
the Niner way of thinking of just more defensive linemen. You know.
Yeah, and go crazy while you have a rookie quarterback contract.
Yeah. Run away with that division.
Oh, I like that a lot. Really quick, Kirk Cousins to the Falcons. Instantly, they win the division. I mean, it only takes 10 wins.
I think so. I mean, I think that defense played quite well last year. The offense has pieces in place. It wouldn't cost you your first round pick either. I mean, you could draft Dallas Turner or Verse or another receiver or something too. I mean, it would just be cap space. Yeah, I think that's where he lands, to be honest with you. The more I think it through.
And then, what do the Vikings do though?
I think they struggle in a bad way. Maybe try to get up for McCarthy. Maybe they're the team to get to 4 or 5 to McCarthy.
Yeah, or they just take their.
They're in a weird spot.
Yeah, the Vikings are in a really weird spot.
They're going to give Jefferson 30 plus, and you know,
Vikings aren't going to go get Fields. If Kirk goes to Atlanta, I could absolutely see Fields in Pittsburgh. That's still my favorite fit anyway.
Mm-hmm.
3rd round pick, right?
Yeah. Like now I'm interested. I mean,
yeah, that starts to make a lot more sense for everybody involved there. I don't know. Fascinating. Can't wait to see how that all turns out. And obviously, things are going to heat up. We got some legal tampering coming up in about a week or so.
I'm also hearing Baker might get like 40 on the open market.
The salary cap just went up 13%.
Yeah,
40,
right.
40 was the old number. He's going to get 45.
He might, yeah, and he's not very good.
Yeah. Next, Jason Kelce's retirement speech. It was a doozy. And combine offensive lineman. What stood out to us in Indy with the biggins? And there's a lot of good ones coming up next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And you can get buckets right now at FanDuel because new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right, $150 extra to play with if your first bet wins. And bet on all your favorite NBA players and NBA teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props. Obviously, NBA season in full swing right now and getting a lot of fun here towards the end of the season as they battle for playoff rights and playoff seeding. NHL's in a similar point in their season. Major League Baseball's getting going and opening day in just a couple of weeks. And can't wait for that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. Car racing. You've got combat sports. You got tennis, golf, soccer, snooker, whatever sport it is. You can find that action at FanDuel. And of course, NFL futures and NFL draft props. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. So, Matt, Jason Kelce has officially retired. We already knew he was going to be done, and that was going to be that. A tear-jerking scene. He was crying from the jump before he even started his press conference there. Sleeveless, too. Love it with Jason Kelce. But there's a whole bunch of new offensive linemen that are going to be joining the NFL as well. So I want to talk about the combine and how many good players there are there. The Philadelphia Eagles, though, already drafted Jason Kelce's replacement. They thought he might not be playing last year. So they got Cam Jurgens there, who's the center of the future. So that's already been figured out. Love where the Philadelphia Eagles are. As weird as their season was, they still got a good roster. They've got new coordinators on both sides of the ball. We'll see how that goes. But what was your takeaway with the Kelce retirement?
Very expected. I mean, it sounded like even that last playoff game that it was a foregone conclusion that they were going to lose. He was going to walk away. I mean, rarely do you say this about a center, but I think he's an easy first ballot Hall of Famer. His last name helps. Not that his play doesn't deserve it, but he's also still in the media. You know, a lot of guards and centers get forgotten. I mean, I think he's an all-time great, and he's going to be missed. I mean, he's still playing really, really well.
If you're a center, it's important to have the PR behind you, and people know who Jason Kelce is. And so that makes his legacy that much stronger. As it pertains to the offensive lineman, the combine, Matt, Jason Kelce still has the fastest short shuttle time in combine history, which is one of the most indicative workout numbers of all of them. We've talked about this a lot. Like I put way more weight into the offensive linemen running at the combine than any other position, especially wide receivers and DBs, even including guys like Xavier Worthy running 4.21. I'm more impressed by Jason Kelce running a let me get this number correct for him. It was a 4.14 short shuttle in the 2011 draft, a 6th round pick. Jason Kelce was, but we went through, what was it? The top 30 combine 40 times, Matt, for wide receivers,
for wideouts. Yeah.
And there was one guy that had 1,000-yard season of those top 30, 40 times for wide receivers. This is the exact opposite for short shuttles at the combine. So this is the list. Since 2010, just 28 offensive linemen have recorded a 4.47 short shuttle or better at the NFL Combine. Of those 28, 24 of them were drafted. This information comes from Josh Norris. And here's the names of the guys that ran the fast short shuttles: Nate Solder, Anthony Costanzo, Andre Dillard, Eric Fisher, Zion Johnson, Jake Matthews, Joel Bitonio, Xavier Suafilo, Jake Fisher, Ali Marpet, Jason Spriggs, James Daniels, Ezra Cleveland, Abraham Lucas, Joe Noteboom, Zach Tom, John Urschel, Joe Haig, Jason Kelsey, David Questenberry, Jeff Baca, Matthew Paradis, Chase Roulier, and Charles Leno, who's actually just hanging it up, who started 128 games in the NFL as a seventh rounder. And then 4 guys were undrafted. One of those, Jake Brendel, is the starting center right now for the 49ers for the last 2 years. So they're almost all good players. There's Hall of Famers on that list. Half of those names came in round 3, 4, and beyond as well. So if you're scouting offensive linemen, find guys that are 300 pounds and can run a sub 5.0 40-yard dash, and find them especially that can run a fast short shuttle. And there was some good short shuttle times at this year's combine as well. You know, you're looking at 4.5 or so and faster. That's a really good indication that these guys are freaky.
100%. And there's 5 of them that are 4.47 or lower, which is the number you referenced, and a bunch in the 4.5 neighborhood. I mean, including Joe Alt, who's almost 6'9". You know, like, that was a couple things that I took away from this O-line group is very few fat guys. You know, I mean, like, they all hold their weight well. The shuttle times were incredible, which, as you said really well, is extremely, extremely important. This was the first time how often do I harp on, boy, the O-line play is so much worse than the D-line play in the NFL. Well, this year might take a step in the right direction for the offensive side of the ball for the first time in a while. And the tackle group is insane. I mean, like, with all respect to Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones, you know, like, there's 6 or 7 of these tackles that would have competed to be first overall in tackle last year.
There's going to be 20 offensive linemen and wide receivers drafted in the first round. 20 of the 32 picks.
Yeah.
Potentially.
It's amazing to me. I mean, the offensive tackle group, I mean, there's some centers and the guards are so, but I can't remember a tackle group being half this good, you know, where 6 or 7 are easy first rounders. I mean, a guy like Guyton or Mims, both of whom were blocked by NFL players at Oklahoma and Georgia. It wasn't
first round guys too. So it's not like they weren't good young, recruits and prospects. They were blocked.
They're blocked, but they're obscene athletes. They just don't have a ton of tape. I mean, if you say anyone looks like Mims, I mean, he is crazy looking, and Latham's unbelievable. I mean, this group just blows my doors off.
It's an unbelievable group. Mims was reported that he had a 4.33, which would have been the second fastest short shuttle time at the combine. Turns out that was a mistake, and so he didn't, because he came up lame after his second 40-yard dash, I think it was, or maybe it was after the first one, and he ran really well, and he moves great. You know, Amarius Mims is one of those that I don't know where he's going to go, but, you know, if you just honestly, I would advise him to take some NIL cash and go back. He would have been a top 5 pick next year potentially. But
I think so. Just stay on the field.
Yeah, you're going to get him later in this year's draft, and so we'll see who's willing to take a chance on just the moldable ball of clay that he is after only 8 college starts. But he's one of those freaks. Tanner Bortolini was the guy, though. Wisconsin, 4.28. It was, I think, the third fastest ever, the fastest this week, or the third fastest, at least in recent history, short shuttle time for the Wisconsin center. He had a fantastic 3-cone time as well, blazing in the 40, just super athletic. If you're looking for one of these outside zone teams, especially, Tanner Bortolini made himself a lot of money and might even sneak into the day 2 range instead of being the day 3 guy. NC State center Dylan McMahon as well, 4.45. Kansas guard Dominic Puney had a 4.40. So those were the big winners there. Brady Latham, Jarrett Kingston also under that 4.47 range.
The tackles are mind-boggling, but I even was shocked by, like, the day 3 centers, you know, led by, like, Bortolini. Like, there's all these athletes, all these zone centers that can run and change direction, and they're not It made me wonder, like, is the day of the 330-pound fat guy center that can handle Vince Wilfork, are they dinosaurs? Like, I don't think you see those guys anymore.
Well, there's one in this draft though too that can move around really well in Jackson Powers Johnson. So
yeah,
who wants that? They can find that as well, aside from the offensive tackle. So you can get a 330-pound center that can still move if you want that in this draft as well. So that's how good this offensive line class is. It's top heavy and it's deep.
So I was on Pittsburgh morning show this morning, and I've said this a couple times on the Steeler airwaves, and I think many teams should look at it the same way. Like, Steelers are picking 20. And if it's up to me, I would structure my entire offseason to take one of those tackles at 20. You know, like, I would go fill other needs, go find other things in the second, third round. Like, when the NFL gives you a gift like this, take it. You know what I mean?
No doubt. You draft a tackle in the first and a center in the third.
Yeah, or sign the center or whatever. I mean, if you're going to get a free – I mean, the Steelers are a great example because they traded up for Broderick Jones. You don't have to trade up, and you're going to get an equal or maybe even better prospect even later in the draft. Like, just take the gift. If that's what they're going to hand you, just say, thank you. I'll take any of these 5 guys. It's fine.
And it's so important. And this is why – and we're seeing a lot of post-combine mock drafts this week, which is a lot of fun, and I love them. But, we haven't seen free agency yet. And when you do a mock draft, and we're going to get your mock draft later this week, tomorrow. Are we doing your mock draft tomorrow? We are, right?
Yeah, sure. Might as well.
And the Williamson mock draft 2.0 post combine. And when you're doing a mock, you're looking at it's like, okay, I'm gonna they have this need. I gotta plug a quarterback in here, or I gotta plug a whatever position in here. They have this huge need. But the smart teams are going best player, and they're taking the gift of what this year's draft is going to give them, and they address needs elsewhere, free agency, other ways. And, we've seen it time and time again. You're passing on good players, you're drafting a need, and it doesn't work out, especially early in the NFL draft. So
these tackles have a lot to do with it, but I think it's pretty clear, as you mentioned, there's probably going to be 20 tackles and receivers combined, at least 4 quarterbacks, Brock Bowers, 2 or 3 edges. I mean, you get to 32 really quick. And, most years there's like 12 to 16 surefire any year they come out first round picks. This year, I think there's like 24.
This is a really strong first round, second round, third round, weaker day.
Awful at the end.
Yeah. That's what this class is shaping up as.
Yep, 100%. Take advantage of it.
Matt Williamson, mock draft 2.0, post combine style coming tomorrow. We're going to move our mailbag to Thursday's episode to get those questions in, whether it's combine related, draft related, free agency, trades, hot dog rollers, whatever it is. Hit us up at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL, or drop a question in the YouTube comments. Matt and I back tomorrow, right here, Peacock and Williamson.